You know who these folks are, but I'm going to do just a very brief introduction. Welcome to today's presentation. We're very delighted to welcome back to MIT, to the Sloan School of Management, Jack and Suzy Welch. As you all know, Jack is the executive chairman of the Jack Welch Management Institute, served as chairman and CEO of General Electric, one of the most admired companies in the world, for 20 years. Suzy Welch, a graduate of Harvard Business School, worked for Bain, and then as an editor for the Harvard Business Review, assists nonprofit organizations today and serves as an advisor to the Jack Welch Management Institute. And as I hope you all know, some of you may be holding copies soon enough, Jack and Suzy have a new book. It is called The Real Life MBA, and we're delighted this afternoon to have a chance to hear from them about some of the concepts and ideas and I think important learnings from their experiences, both that are reflected in the book and in a few minutes in response to questions from you. So we have a little bit of an interview conversational format. That'll be about 25 minutes worth. We'll start there. And then after about 25 minutes, we'll open it up for Q&A. And then for those of you who would like to stay around after, Jack and Suzy have been kind enough to say that at 1 o'clock they'll stay with folks who would like to stay here and have some further conversation with each of you. Would you please give an extraordinarily warm MIT welcome to Jack and Suzy Welch.
Thank you.
We haven't met each other before. We start by talking about the book maybe a little bit. What can people expect when they pick up the book? Maybe some surprises or some things that you discovered along the way.
Why do I always go first? Well, first off, we're so happy to be here. We love MIT. Our niece is a graduate of Sloan and a proud alumna and has a great job and is a great testament to what you all do here. When you pick up this book, what you would, well, let me start by saying Jack and I wrote this book because we didn't think this book existed. It had been 10 years since we wrote Winning together, and we were sort of bumping along, having very happy, full lives. But then we kept on bumping into people as we traveled around the world. We did a calculation. We've spoken to about 1 million people in the past 12 years who didn't have time to do what you guys are really blessed to be doing, which is to take 2 years off to get an MBA. I mean, and it takes a certain place in your life in terms of flexibility, availability, and all sorts of other stuff to come and do what you're doing.
Like money.
Okay, and money. Nice parents. And so we wanted to create an MBA in a book, basically. And so I think I don't know what would surprise you because I think you guys are getting a fantastic education, but I don't know, I'd love to know if you have a class on getting whacked. I mean, we have a chapter called Getting Whacked. And that's going to happen to you in all of your careers. Many of you have worked. It's probably already happened to you, where the competitor comes and eats your lunch or you get fired. That happened to me. And there's just many different things in your career where you're going to get whacked. And we talk about why that happens and what to do when that happens. So there might be some surprises that way. I think the chapter on finance will surprise you. But in general, we just hope that it's a great kind of supplement to what you're learning already here. And maybe the surprise will be how often you're reading it sort of saying, yep, I get that, I've heard that, I know that. So.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think that I just add that we've got a series of chapters here that deal with what happens in your career, what happens in building teams. When we went out on the road, 2 things stood out for us. And we've talked to crowds as small as 100 and as large as 40,000. And we have over 1 million inputs to this analysis, if you will. It's all anecdotal, but clearly people are frustrated by what happened in the 2008 recession. People in workplaces. It's been a grind. It's tough to get back. Benefits were cut. Lots of things have happened. It's not the same old place. Competition is harder. It's faster. And 2 things stood out. One was when we asked the question, how many of you know where you stand in your company? What your career trajectory looks like? And what your boss thinks of you. We don't get 10 to 15% anywhere So the whole idea of transparency, in today's world, transparency has to be there because everybody knows everything. The information is not a secret anymore. And so we desperately wanted to talk about the desperate need to give people purpose in their life, to engage them, get into their skin, give them a mission as to where you're going, why you're going there, and how you're going to get there, and what are the consequences for them if you get there. And that was clearly a desire that we had. And then there's this worker engagement issue. Gallup does a poll, and Gallup's poll says, and we believe business is a game. I ought to start with that. Business is a game, and the team that feels the best players wins. It's not much different than the Red Sox, the Patriots, or anybody else around here. And that's what business is. And yet, in survey after survey by Gallup, 65% of the workforce since the recession is not engaged with the company. They're mad about pensions. They're mad about 401ks being hurt. They're not sure of their boss anymore. The layoffs were all around them. When you go on, imagine going to with your team, supporting your team, and you go to the game, and 65% of them stay in the locker room. Your chances of winning are reduced significantly. Well, that's the same thing that's true in business. And so we talk a lot about engagement, building teams, how to do it. So a lot of these things get at the issues that are on people's minds out there. And that's what this book is all about.
You also spent some time talking about technology, social media. I mean, things that are very much maybe challenges people 15 years ago weren't writing about business and management. Can you say a little bit about those themes?
About the Coliseum, if you will. Yeah, I mean, today, as you know as well or more than anyone, everyone knows everything. And whether you go to a restaurant and don't like it and put it on Yelp, or you're Taco Bell and your employee is doing something crazy in your store and making fun of the hamburger, and your whole franchise line is almost over in a day, you've got to have both an offense and defensive strategy around social media. You got to, and we talk a lot about the examples. Last Friday, we were talking to the chief communications officers of Fortune 100 companies, and they were 350 people were there. And the guy from MasterCard got up and talked. Now, the PR person in MasterCard you would not think of as a techie, right? Think of a slick promoter, hustler, trying to deal with press, trying to make it a story for MasterCard. This guy got up, and all he talked about was technology. MasterCard's room, where they're listening in to every word on every social media, whether we MeCat, anything. They're there listening for the word MasterCard. They have a huge screen. And they know in Thailand, if MasterCard's having a bad experience, they've got a program, and they're on offense right away about that. And to think of the old PR person was a person that when the fire bell rang, because somebody did something wrong, they came down the fire pole and came out for a press conference to tell you about 20 lies and tried to spin the whole thing so you can stay out of trouble. And now the PR people are out there offensively looking at how to keep that brand relevant, exciting, in front of people. So whenever there's a glitch anywhere, he has a 50-person staff doing this. That never would happen before. It was always 2 people in a fire drill. Now it's an offensive move to be sure that brand is always protected. So all these changes that are going on today are just so important. Everything's faster, quicker, more technology, as you all know.
And I'm sure you, as you all know, and you've been told many times about your own personal brand using social media. I mean, that is just so essential. And we have 2 kids who are graduated from college and out in the workforce, and we have a son who's about to graduate next month and is going through the whole job placement process now. And he had a great interview with a great company yesterday. And during the course of the interview, the person who was interviewing him, a high-level person at this a great entrepreneurial company, I said to him, well, I looked at all your tweets, read all your tweets, found you here, found you there, found his entire social media footprint, and had just done complete surveillance on him. Thank goodness it was all good and reflected back. But he was able to say to me, like, oh, I understand. Wow, you really like this music, and you're cycling, and how'd you do in that race, and you like Magic the Gathering, and blah blah blah. And so it's very important that you're proactive about it. And we write all about this. I'm sure you've been told that at school already, that your bosses potential bosses will know everything about you by your public footprint. So manage it that way.
You also talked a little bit about the challenges of managing some people who are growing up in a very technology-oriented world, people who are geniuses in IT or engineering, and that's something that maybe is different or new.
Yeah.
I just did a little survey.
We talk about geniuses.
A little survey. Who knows this Cher song, Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves? Oh, man, okay, you guys are young. So we have a chapter called Geniuses, Tramps, and Thieves based on this great Cher song from like 1971.
I told you that.
I know, Jack said the young people wouldn't know it. Our kids knew it, but maybe because I'm always singing it. And I'll just briefly say that, and Jack can say more.
Thanks for that, because we
know,
have
really,
a long argument about that time.
It's too late now. It's in the book. We write in the book about 3 different types of employees that 10 years ago we could not have written about in Winning. And you will all, as you go out here and people manage these 3 new types of workers. And the first, we call them geniuses, and these are the people whose work you don't understand. And it used to be that when you got to be a manager, you had done the work of everyone underneath you. When I was made the editor of the Harvard Business Review, I'd done the work of every single person that had reported to me. But these days, you can be made, for the book, we interviewed CEOs who are managing thousands of coders, and they're not coders. Or people who go into finance, and you are managing people who do finance work you've never done and just simply don't understand. And so we talk a lot about the techniques around managing those individuals. The tramps refers to...
No, I want to tell the story of how we came to this. Our daughter is in California, and her iPhone was busted. And we went to the Apple store, and we saw this genius there, and then we saw the manager. And the genius took the iPhone, took it back, and started to work on it. And the manager was about 25 years old and very cute, and our daughter was 23. So we had to hang around so that something might happen here. And so we started talking to the manager. And the manager was a BA from Berkeley. You can imagine, in history. Now, you can imagine what he knew about this iPhone problem inside. And we said, how the hell do you manage these problems? He said, I have 2 things I have to do. I measure 2 things. I'm told by Apple I've got to be sure that my employees are engaged. I've got to get in their skin. But the most important thing I do without question is I just look at that customer when they get the gadget back. If that widget is bringing a smile to them because they don't have to buy a new one, they're now fixed, they're on their way, and they're happy. So my output and my measurement is all about customers' smiles. That's what I have to know. I don't have to know anything about what's inside that case. But I better be sure my employees are happy and this customer is smiling. That's a lesson in itself, because when you manage anything like that, you're looking for output. And big data is now a big, huge thing. Everybody talks big data, analytics. We got to have more analytics. You can drown. I've been in private equity meetings the last 2 days drowning in data. And let me tell you, what you have to know is, what are you trying to do with the data? That's all you have to know. What outcome are you looking for? What will these data bring you? If you ask that question and then measure them against that, you don't have to know beans about how they got all the data and where they got it from and all the analytics they pour all over your head. Make it meaningful. What is the purpose? So that's the story of geniuses.
I just want to say this poor manager at the Apple store, he just wanted to get us out of the way. We were interrogating him, kept on looking over our shoulders at Sophia. So anyway, the next group that we talk about is, we call them tramps. And these are the 35% of people who work at home or work remotely or not in your site. And you will manage people who are remote, and you will be remote yourself sometimes, or virtual is a probably better word. And along with that, and just as often, is that many people are subcontractors, and you are one of many of their clients. And so you have to somehow engage them and make them a huge part of your team when you can't see them and you're not really the boss of them in some ways. Okay, they can just basically, if they like another customer or client better, they can say, you know what, actually, I'm not taking pictures for you today. We had a case with a photographer. I'm going to go take pictures for the Wall Street Journal because they just treat me a lot better. So this is you'll all face this as managers right off the bat. I mean, you'll have a team maybe of 5 people within a year or 2 after you get out, and 2 of them won't be in your site. And how do you integrate that? How do you do that? Ironically or paradoxically, your best friend in this is actually technology, right? I mean, technology allows them to be away from you, but technology, when managed proactively, allows you to bring them close. And then the third group of sort of the third new employee we talk about the thieves, right? We're not actually talking about the employees who steal from you, because really those people are usually found out pretty quickly and they're booted out, and that number is glancingly small, thank goodness. We're talking about the biggest thief that we've seen in organizations in the past 10 years, and that thief is fear. It's fear. People are scared. They've seen their jobs disappear. They've seen people sort of who've been sitting next to them sort of vaporize. They've seen industries collapse and reconfigure so that their skills are no longer relevant. And people are scared. And your job as a manager is not just to acknowledge that there's fear and people are worried and therefore emotionally shut down somewhat, because you don't want your employees ever emotionally shut down, but to talk about it and talk about what really there is to be afraid of and what you can do to conquer that fear. And it is the big thief of productivity and engagement.
And we were in Finland when Nokia was going down the drain. And we were having meetings in Finland with a huge crowd in where's that place?
Yaroslavl.
I want you to test
I hope there's no Finns here. Just flew that one. So
anyway, you should see the paralysis on those people. Microsoft was buying them. They didn't know where their future was. Microsoft was miles and miles away, and these people were the most frightened people we've ever seen in our life. That's happening now in GE Capital. GE Capital is spinning off a big piece of the company, and we were down at Sacred University the other night, and a lot of GE Capital people were coming through. We got to communicate like hell to them to be sure that they know where they're going, what's in it for them, why to stay or go, what to do. Fear is an enormous problem that you will manage all your life, and particularly in tech businesses, if you go in tech businesses, because they vaporize overnight if you're not right. So you've got to be constantly concerned. Paranoia is a wonderful thing. You as leaders better have a big dose of it and be just totally on people to be sure that they know where we're going and how you're getting there.
So strategically, paranoia is good, but organizationally, paranoia is bad.
It's terrible.
Yeah. So a tiny tangent, can't resist. Inquiring minds want to know. GE Capital, buy, sell, hold?
Well, first of all, let me say about GE Capital, when people are curious about how I feel. Well, that was then, and this is now. That's one phrase. The other phrase, though, is the game has changed. It's like having it's like having a widget, and the new widget comes and takes it away. When the financial crisis hit, the financial services business tipped upside down. Banks aren't fun anymore. Capital businesses aren't fun anymore because why? Regulation. It's all over you. You got Dodd-Frank. You've got regulators in your knickers all day, sitting beside you, approving or not approving deals. It's unbelievable. It's no longer free enterprise. It's free enterprise with some bureaucrats sitting right beside you. And leverage is the thing of the past in most cases. And so you're out trying to, we were at 6-1, 7-1, and it was a hell of a business. And for 27 years, we grew at 30% a year. And it was fun. But all of a sudden, the game changed, like a new technology. And they're changing with it. The reason GE is the only company in the world, in the US Dow Jones, since the beginning, is it changed. When the world changed. I've been out of there for 15 years. I've never been back in the office. And there's a new team making decisions today in the face of today's environment. And I hope somebody's sitting here 100 years from now saying they're still the only one in the Dow Jones because they changed every time when they had to. And the journalists are having such fun. Are you sad, Jack?
I know.
Is it devastating to you? God, no, I got a life. That answer, you want to expand?
That'll do for today. We'll find some other controversial things. Can we come back for a second to fear and what a leader can do about fear in an organization? One of the things that you talk about is growth and the importance of growth for organizations, but not just growth, because there's profitability that can be associated, but growth because there's purpose associated with growth, and people know what they're supposed to be doing. Can you say a little bit more about that? I think I really liked that.
There's a lot of different ways to answer that question, but let me just say that one of the main concepts in the book is about really what the leader's job is, and along with growth. I mean, there's sort of this umbrella over all of it, and it really boils down to two words, and the two words are truth and trust. Okay, so if you can think back to all the places you worked before you came to business school, and you can ask yourself, was I a member of an organization that would be described as being places where there was truth and trust? And by truth, we mean this sort of relentless seeking of the truth. No spin, no BS, no agendas, just the truth. Did people speak to each other truthfully, or were there cabals and cliques? Did the truth go up and down and sideways? But truth never happens without trust. And trust really is doing what you say and saying what you mean, and we all know what trust looks like. They go together. You can't have truth without trust, and you can't have trust without truth. And when you peel away all the things, and we've got a chapter that's got a lot of things that leaders do, the chief meeting officer, the clearing out obstacles, we go on about it a lot. But really it comes down to creating these environments of truth and trust. And in those environments, then growth happens. And then you can talk about fear. Because sometimes there is good reason for fear. Yeah, we are about to be acquired, and we may all go away. Let's talk about it. And let's talk about how to have meaning and purpose until then, and so forth. But truth and trust, that's an overarching. When you're creating your own company, some of you will be entrepreneurs. How do I build an organization with truth and trust? Because everything will go faster, and people will be happier, and I'll get a better team if we have truth and trust. So.
Now, you've all looked at companies to join. You've worked in companies. As you look at a company from the outside, not the one you just left, or the one you just left is worth looking at, but do you look at the culture, or do you look at its growth rate? Do you ask the question, who gets promoted around here? Do you ask, what are the characteristics of the person that wins in this company? Most people aren't smart enough to ask that question. They go for a brand. Google, Apple, whatever, GE, whatever, a brand. But do they really ask, do I fit this culture? Is this a place I want to hang out? Because I'm the type of person that I see the career track go with, and I've got just the right stuff to grow my career, expand my life, and have a great time. We happen to believe, after a combined 80 years of managing and doing stuff, that an organization that has truth and trust, and when you dig, that's the overarching winning culture. A culture where everyone speaks candidly and openly, where people don't come into the meeting with slides or whatever, PowerPoints or whatever, to make a case with spin. There should be a neon light in every conference room flashing, truth only, truth only, truth only, where people know people have the other person's back, where people get appraised frequently so they know where they stand. And you're in a culture without mystery. Are you looking for that for a job? or are you grabbing a brand? Something to think about. Because in the end, a truth and trust culture is an enormously fun place to be. Engagement is high. Growth comes. All these things, all these good things occur. But when you got cabals here and cabals here, when you're having meetings after the meetings, you ever been in a place where the real meeting takes place in the hallway after the meeting? We don't talk about the real stuff in the meeting. We wait till we get down the hall and whisper. That type of crap has to be gone in a great culture. And you've got to, as you look for a company, talk about the culture with the people when you're there. Ask them, tell me who gets, what are the last 3 promotions here? Who got them? What did they have that made you promote them? Don't forget, you've got an MIT Sloan degree. So you're on the right side of the buying equation at the interview point. Once you sign up, you're in. And then you've got to start looking elsewhere if you find out it's a bad culture. But on the front end, everybody wants you. You got the big credential. Take advantage of that. And ask, not just, you can find out everything about the company on social media. You get questions about cultures.
So that's probably a pretty good place for us to start thinking about opening it up to the audience.
Sure.
Can I ask before we do that, though, you guys keep coming back to MIT? Why?
Well, I absolutely love that. I guess I put quotes around this word, so I don't mean to overstate my case. I get slapped. I taught here, quotes. I showed up here for an hour and a half class with the greatest bunch of students for 5 years in a row. And I had the most wonderful time in the world. I love the students here. I like the students here, but in any place I've been except my own school now. But in fact, I got the teaching bug from the students I had here. And I've always thanked Dave because they gave me the seed. Nelson Repping's here, I think, and he was my partner, and he taught me how to teach. And then I showed up and yelled and screamed for an hour and a half. But we had a blast, and we celebrated. We had parties at the place. We did everything. I mean, we did what we want.
Don't need to hear about the parties.
There was good parties.
No, they were great, though. But it's part of what you want to have in a company, that same atmosphere. And so for me, the answer is very easy. I love MIT. I love the education here. I love the entrepreneurship here. I love the diversity here. There's nothing, and I don't say this everywhere else, so I'm telling you, that's the truth.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anyone who would have a question for these folks? It would be good if you have a microphone. Anybody got a microphone?
Here it goes.
Great.
Hi, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
In your book, you talk a lot about getting whacked, and you also talk about alignment. And in a lot of these alignment processes, you can align out dissension and diversity. So can you talk, and then maybe when you have no dissension, you get whacked by something that wasn't brought up. So can you talk a little bit about sort of bringing the two ideas of strength and diversity, but also having alignment, and how those can support each other?
It's a
That's a great
fabulous question.
Very good.
And alignment means here's where we're going, how we're going to get there. But before you decide here's where we're going, dissension is rampant. And you've got to, in order to get at the truth, you've got to have a food fight. I mean, you've got to have a battle in that room that to define where you're going. It's not here's where we're going. It's let's get together and decide where we're going and get at it. And you want the most diverse opinions you can possibly get from as many levels of the organization as you can get at. And so in no way does alignment get in the way of getting opinion. You have to have a thirst to get every mind in the game. It's one of the principles of leadership, get every mind in the game. If I could get this first row on either side, if I could know everything they know in my head, I'd be so much smarter. And you've got to go to work thinking that every day. Everyone is a mentor. Everyone's got an idea. Everyone's got something to bring to you. You've got to be open to that all the time. And so I don't see any conflict between alignment and broad interaction and engagement. They go together.
But once you get that agreement, right, there is something to be said for, we're saying, okay, we're not going to continually debate the strategic goal. We have had the debate, we've had the conversation, we've had the food fight. This is where we're going. And these are the behaviors that we're going to use to get there. Now, get on the bus or find a place where you like the strategic goal better. Now that you can never shut down somebody when you're going along towards the goal saying, could we do it better this way or could we do that better that way? But there are in organizations, and you've all bumped into them, there are just people there who are sort of professional gadflies, and they just want to slow every process down, and that's sort of their momentum. And you have to make a decision as a manager whether they're good for the organization and they're worth the sort of way they keep on sticking their finger in the spokes, or whether this is just their shtick. And that's a discernment issue. And that's a leadership issue. But you raise a great point. You want to have conversation and debate and something you manage.
Thank you. Who else?
Go on.
Mike.
Jack and Suzy, I want to start by thanking you for writing Winning. I think it was, of all the books I've ever read, the most comprehensive and epic book on management that's practical. So thank you so much for writing that. It was amazing.
Where did you get this one?
Don't worry, I'll take a look at it.
It's different.
Winning talked a lot about, was really applicable to a lot of organizations that has an established culture and hierarchy. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in early stage kind of interest in the MIT crowd. Can you talk a little bit about collaboration or building culture or candor in young early stage companies or even startups?
It's absolutely more critical, and we talk about this in this book. You have to get it right because you're beginning, you don't have a big fat resource base to draw from. So if you've got 5 people, you've got to have all 5 people operating on all cylinders. So these 5 people have got to be engaged, they've got to be passionate, you've got to use every technique there is to keep them thinking, growing, excited. I don't think there's an ounce of difference between the tools of it. You need to find courageous people that are willing to go in a shoestring on a bet. You don't want somebody who's talking about the pension plan hired the first day. So there isn't can you think of a principle that wouldn't be used in an entrepreneurial atmosphere that isn't talked about in Winning as a way to build a team, grow an organization, et cetera? It's the same stuff. I started the plastics business at GE. Now, I had the luxury. I was the first employee. I had 1 technician. I communicated well with that technician. There were just the 2 of us. We were in a lab. We had a little beaker. And 25 years later, we had a $16 billion company. But all the stuff that we did was get 3, get 4, get 5 employees, bring them home, hang out with them, be all over it, stay all night working on projects. It was all the same stuff. And you want to get that attitude in a big company. That's all we're trying to say. But the principles are the same.
One of the things we talk about in this book is how often, when we've been traveling around the world and we've spoken to students that afterwards, when we've been doing book signings or sort of mingling one-on-one, that MBAs will approach us and say, and we'll say, so what are you doing? What do you want to do? And they'll say, I want to be an entrepreneur. And that is grown in propensity over the past 10 years. They want to be an entrepreneur. So then, of course, our next question is, obviously, what's your idea? And that's the problem, right? Because then what you get is sort of like, sometimes you get somebody who's got a great idea and they say it right to you. And then you've got other people who say, I'm working on that. Something in tech. And
if they even do more. No, I just want to be an entrepreneur.
Right, and we're like,
it's
okay.
not a profession.
All right, without the idea.
Who else has a question?
This is going to be a fast
I know,
event.
I know.
There we are.
Go ahead, you can
Get a
just say it. We'll
microphone here.
repeat it.
Yeah, you,
Say it and we'll repeat it.
Yeah. So going back to the point of culture, going back to the point of culture, a lot of organizations are becoming more flat, and there's more engagement from different levels of staff or management. But one of the problems that I personally have seen, like, from like startups versus like the big corporations, is that that democracy does not necessarily work very well for companies as they grow, because it just doesn't make things more like efficient or productive as much. So from your experience, like how would you advise, especially startups that are on the growth phase, like how would you strike that balance?
Well, I'd start out with the question I think is, as the startup grows, how do you make sure they don't become like a big corporation? Is that generally, or you make it clear, you got a mic now?
I mean, like to like stick to the culture of like democracy and engaging your staff, as you mentioned, but at the same time still be like productive and on growth.
That's his question.
Do you want to start?
No.
Well, I think there are a few principles. One is hate layers. If I'm in a startup and all of a sudden I start to grow, I got to have a manager doing this. I got to have a hate layers. Layers bring filtration. Truth gets harder to get. So as you're in a startup, you never want to lose it. The last thing you want to do is to promote group leaders and people getting hierarchical. You do everything to stay flat, 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 so that the message is always clear, the people are always engaged with you, there's no spin. I'm not telling you what we're going to do, and then you're telling your team. I'm talking all the time to your team. Or you as the entrepreneur are talking all the time to the team. The biggest problem in bureaucracies come from layers. Layers are evil. They're absolutely evil. When I was running a large company, I had 29 direct reports. And people say, you're supposed to have some rule of 7 or 9 or some nonsense that's out there. If you have too few people reporting to you, you end up meddling. You end up bothering them in their work. Your job is not managing them. Your job is to do the next thing. And so you got to constantly fight to stay small in every aspect, in the soul, with quick rewards, with constant information, in the wallet with fast cash for hitting something good, or more equity, whatever you want to use. But you keep agile and unlayered. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that it's such a, I was at a company where as soon as you had 3 people reporting to you, you added a person. I mean, it was crazy. Everybody wanted to be a boss. That was sort of it was a nonprofit, so a stripe on your shoulder was being a boss, and you just got to fight it.
I was in Philadelphia the other night at a school. Can I mention you were there once? I was at Wharton.
we know how to spell it.
No, I mean it is so crazy that people desperately want to have layers. Now this came out of the reason why this is there. If you're going to a corporation of any size, not today's company, but you'll see it, whether it be Google, from anybody else, you'll see layers, layers, layers. And a guy came up to me and said, I was the CEO of Hay Associates, consulting firm. I said, when I see you, I said here, I like you, but I hated the crap you were selling. Hay used to give points for how many people reported to you. So if you were a 12-point manager, you were more important than a 7-point manager. So what does that mean? You get more people reporting to you. That system actually existed in the 80s and early 90s in corporate America. A point system. And that resulted in people wanting, as Suzy said, the size of your epaulets on your shoulder determined. I have 8 people reporting to me. I have 12. And that nonsense, the highest tech, I remember Microsoft's early days. They were going to be entrepreneurial without bureaucracy, without layers. They looked like every other company. Google started to look like every other company. It's the way it is. They build up, fiefdoms occur, and away you go. Your question's great. Fight that urge till the last breath.
Right behind you.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit abstract question. From your perspective, for what purpose corporation exists? I want to listen your opinion.
To create wealth for lots of people who invest in them. It's a means of investing and to enrich lives of armies of people. The biggest turn on in a corporation is to see lots of people win. It is unbelievable. And I can tell you stories. We had 60,000 people with stock options. And I would sit there on a Friday afternoon, and an old IBM printout would come out. And we'd see that a person making $90,000 would have cashed in, and we didn't know their name. We knew their name, but not them. And you'd say $90,000 last week cashed in, $400,000 in stock options. And we'd all high five and say, what a hell of a weekend they're going to have. And that's what it's all about. You want to enrich all kinds of people. You want their lives to be richer in the soul with praise, with achievement, with growth. And you want to enrich them in the wallet. The wallet counts. And you want to make them have great lives with lots of flexibility. You know, big shots get money fast. But the job of the big shot is to make sure lots of people get it. And lots of people have the spirit and the fun of the place. And that is what it's about. And the corporation is a very important part of the whole economic system in the company where wealth is invested back, new ideas come. New ideas come in corporations every day. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. We're going to be an entrepreneurial company. The problem with we're going to be that is everybody thinks you got to be Steve Jobs or you got to be Thomas Edison. It's not the way it works in a company. Everybody's got a better idea every day if you get the right culture. You're fighting to get incremental better ideas every day. And companies make the biggest mistake in the world when they talk about innovation all day, because they turn off 90% of the people who don't think they can be Steve Jobs or Thomas Edison. You want every mind coming to work every day with one thought in mind. Find a better way every day.
It doesn't have to be a huge invention. It could be a process improvement. I mean, innovation can be large or small. And if you ask people just, how can you do your job better? How can you see ways processes can be done better? That's innovation. It can be celebrated as innovation.
Thank you.
Who's got a microphone? Is there two of them?
There's
Yeah.
one right there with the
All right.
microphone.
Very good.
Yeah.
I very much like your phrase that government has taken the fun out of finance. But in a world where our challenges have become increasingly national or global, such as healthcare, energy, climate change, you name it, what role do you think government has, particularly in relation to the private sector?
To keep the rules of the road so that behaviors are good, to have rules. Now, when you have overreactions to rules, and that's always a pendulum, we always get the backlash. Do we have to have financial regs? Absolutely. Do they have to have hundreds of regulators in an office looking at every deal? That's an overreaction. So government has a real role. Of course it does. It has a role to protect us. It has a role to police us. It has a role in all kinds of things. And business, keep us on the right track. Antitrust, all kinds of things, excuse me. All kinds of things. But they don't have the right to run your business. What business? Go to the DMV tomorrow and get your license. Just sit there. They're a bunch of lousy bureaucrats that have no energy and no excitement. Now, that's the leadership. That's the leadership. They're not building the best team to win the game. They have no competition. You got to go there to get your license. You got to meet people that are beat up all day. in a drudgy job because no one's exciting them. So government, you don't want government running the enterprises. And now they're in healthcare, they're in banking, they're everywhere. They're in education. I mean, try starting a new school. They're all over you. And I'm not sure always for the good. And now we always know we get no overreaction. Everybody knows that. Once you do something wrong, whoa, the swing back, we always go too far. Hopefully we'll come back to the middle of it. 10 years from now, we won't be having this conversation about finance, I don't think. We'll have swung back. We were probably too deregulated. Now we're too regulated. Somewhere in the middle, we'll get. But I'll tell you one thing, your jobs will be different than the one I came into 30 years ago, 35 years ago. You will have to be involved with government because government is now in your knickers. And you will have to make government a major part of almost everything you do. And that was not the case before.
Hi, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us. I knew a general manager who once swore by hiring GE graduates over people from top business schools. So my question to you is, what companies today are giving that kind of training to people who work there for the job market?
Well, there are a number of them. I would say Pepsi. I would say Procter & Gamble continues to.
I think FedEx has a good program.
Yeah, FedEx has a program. Obviously, Starbucks is doing stuff now with Arizona in a broad program for online education there. So, I think there's as much today as there was then. It's just a different mix of companies, and it's much more contemporary. It's online. It's a different way of doing it.
Who else is there a microphone someplace? Whoever's got a microphone, stand up and use it.
Thanks a lot for coming. So, Jack, you were a part of GE for more than 40 years, and nowadays people switch on the order of months and maybe a couple of years. Can you talk about what that does to a company and how us as future managers should approach it to improve the culture?
Well, first of all, managers you gotta make your place look exciting place to hang out. Suzy has a piece of this book about you want to be the place where the cool kids hang out. And it used to be the basement in high school where the best cliques hung out to have fun. And you want to make business fun in your place. So there's no question. I also run or an advisor, spends a lot of time at IAC. Where we're in the dating business. We have OkCupid, we have Tinder, we have Match.com, and we have Ask. And there is a lot of mobility. We desperately do everything to excite our people, give them equity, get them involved, all the things you do to make your place higher. But it's tougher to build a culture in today's world if you don't, but it puts great pressure on leaders. Because great leaders don't have high turnover. When you see high turnover, you see a problem. We used to have, whenever a union showed up at a factory, years and years ago, we knew we had a horse's ass managing the factory. And they wanted to vote. It was not the people, it was the manager that created an atmosphere that caused that. The same thing's true in turnover. If you're in a place where you're being compensated, as I say, in the soul and the wallet, the business is exciting. Like we're growing like crazy in these dating businesses. People aren't leaving. And we're doing all kinds of things to keep them. And so it's your job. But it's harder to build the old culture because it's there's other opportunity for great people. And now you guys have got the ticket. You got a ticket. And that ticket's a big ticket coming from here. And so you can I hired a Sloan graduate. The manager's turned on. Now, hopefully the manager's going to like you a month after there as much as he liked bragging about you on the way in. But that's That's your challenge.
Do we have maybe one more question? And we've got a microphone.
Yeah, I had a question about picking your successor. So
Yeah.
I think the natural tendency a lot of times is to look at the next job and what you need to do to get there and think less about kind of the wake you leave behind in your organization. So I was wondering if you had some pointers and things you learned along the way in picking a good successor.
It's a fabulous question. Look, hiring in general is the toughest job in the world. And one of the things that we face in our companies, and I'm managing 24 companies in private equity and then these other companies in technology, we face a huge problem in hiring. Because if you get hiring right 70% of the time, you are an A+ student. 50 is a good average, getting it right from the outside. When I started in GE, I probably got it right about 40% of the time. As I went on, I probably got up to 75%, and I was hiring people I knew for 40 years. Because when they go to the next job, you don't know how they're going to behave. The problem we face with young graduates is that when they make a hiring mistake, they get embarrassed. Oh my God, I got to hide this. And they try doing the work of the person. You will get more credit for walking into your boss after you do that than you'll ever believe by saying, I booted it. And then your job is to treat that person with dignity on the way out. Remember this rule, love them on the way out as much as you loved them on the way in. You owe that. That's an obligation. You made the mistake. You hired them. Severance is the cheapest dollar you'll ever spend. Be generous and be decent. Give them time, but get them out. Because if they hang around and you start doing the work for them, you'll kill yourself. And you'll get so much credit for coming in and saying, I made a mistake. I've got to treat this person right. We need to give them good severance and get them out of the way. So hiring and succession and all that is the toughest job in the world because you never know how people are going to perform in the next job. There's no formula. And don't be embarrassed about not getting it right. You join a legion, an army who've gone before you, making that mistake. Yeah, you want more up there? He's anxious.
Average age of 40, but today I feel like a 25-year-old. Really want to see Jack and Suzy. So that's anxious. So my question is actually follow up with your thought on the picking up the next CEO. In the old days, U.S. companies send the next successor to Europe or to any other part of the world. But today, time has changed. Would you suggest send them to Asia or Latin America? How would you picture that CEO become from the successor to the CEO?
Well, I mean, a global company is going to pick from the pool of talent, and more CEOs are global. So you're seeing that all over the place. Now, I would not suggest a startup who's now just gone public and has 1,000 employees and most of the sales are domestic and they don't have an infrastructure overseas, go hire a Brazilian to try it out. So I think that totally depends on your geographic presence and your experience and your talent pool from those countries.
Yep. Any last thoughts from the book that you think people should hear?
You know,
Go ahead, Suzy.
we didn't talk about area of destiny. And
Please.
given the age of the crowd, just one thought. I mean, you're all sort of our kids' age, and we have a concept in the book that's new to this book and has really captured generally people your age. So we'll just run it by you. And so many of you are so focused and you're so ambitious, and you know what you want to do with your life. So this may not be relevant to you, but we still find, even in your cohort at great schools, this sense like, I have so much opportunity. What should I do with my life? And you know, you could go work at Google, but you could go work in retail. I mean, you could do anything because you're all so talented. So we have a construct called Area of Destiny. And it goes like this. It says that the place that you should build your career and build your life is at the intersection of two superhighways, if you will. And one superhighway is what you're uniquely good at. It's hard for you guys because you're good at so many things, but you're uniquely good at something. I mean, if you don't know what that is, ask your friends, ask your classmates, ask your mom. She'll know what you are uniquely good at. And it could be, I'm not talking about it being, something like, I'm not talking about things saying marketing. I'm talking about solving complex equations, hospitality, making strangers feel welcome. I mean, there's something you are uniquely good at. So think about that superhighway. And then think about the superhighway about what you love to do. You got a month, you look at your schedule for a month, and there's some things that you really love doing more than others. Like you love reading a book, or you love being with friends, or you love time by yourself, or you love time in a big crowd. And you intersect those two, what you're uniquely good at and what you love to do. That's your area of destiny. And we have really thought about this for the last couple of years, and every single time we meet somebody who's loving their life and thriving and successful, guess what? They're in their area of destiny. We met a guy when we were doing the book. He worked at Hertz, one of Jack's private equity companies. Every time we met with him, he's running a small division for Hertz. He was about to jump out of his skin. I mean, the guy looked like the Green Hulk. He was going to burst out of his suit. He was so uncomfortable in his job. And just fast forward.
But he was good.
He was very good at what he did, okay, because he was a talented guy working in business, in the car business. But we found out, because we got to know him pretty well, that basically he was living for getting off of work, where he was a triathlete and he coached other triathletes, and he was just a junkie for sports and competing with your body. And if you just fast forward, eventually he exploded because he couldn't stay where he was. He's now the number 2 or 3 guy at Equinox. And all he does, the big gym company, the big fitness company, all he does all day is hang out with people just like him, and he's really successful there. Okay? And so we urge people your age to think about, look, I was in your shoes, and I was a journalist, and I went to work at Bain because I was thinking about the highest salary and the prestige and all sorts of other stuff.
And a free education.
Yes, and also they paid for my 2 years at Harvard Business School, yes, which was really, really important, but I was not thinking about my area of destiny. And actually, 25 years later, I ended up in it. Okay, I ended up there, but it took a longer time. So you might save yourself this happening before your midlife crisis if you sort of spend some time thinking about what am I uniquely good. And sometimes it takes a while to get there. That's true. Okay, and maybe it's not the job that pays the most. That's often true.
Tell Marcus's story quickly.
Okay, all right. So our son, our children get a real workout in this book because they're such good examples. So we had a son. He went to boarding, went to Exeter, and he was good at science. And so he went to Cornell, and he was going to major in earth sciences because he was good at science. Okay, but then he got to Cornell his first semester, and guess what? He met the kids who were really good at science. I mean, he started taking classes with the kids who were uniquely good at science. That was a very rough first semester. He came home at Thanksgiving shell-shocked. Okay, and we thought, well, SpaghettiOs, because this is not looking very good. And he was saying, Mom, if I actually want to get ahead in this field, I've even got to go to graduate school with all these kids who are uniquely good at science. So he actually, his whole life, had been uniquely good at something. We didn't really think it was relevant. But he was uniquely good at picking bands and musicians that were going to be huge. So you'd be driving along with a 9-year-old, and he would say, this band's going to be huge. And then 2 years later, they'd win Grammy for Best Artist. It was weird, okay? He had this special, unique skill. He had an ear. And he also, then he went on, he ran a radio show, he did this, he did that. I love music. He just did everything with music. And we said, well, maybe this is your area of destiny. This summer, why don't you get a job in the music industry? And he went right out, he got himself a job at Sirius XM Radio as a music programmer. To say he was in his glory doesn't describe it. One day, Jack and I are at home. It's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. He comes home, and he's like glowing from the inside out. And he goes, guess what? He said, I'm going to quit school and just work for them full time. Starting right now, they'll have me. And so we thought, this is out of control, and that is not happening. But that's a kid who now he's about to graduate, and he's going right into the music industry. And he was a kid who got, we said, we saved you 25 years as a middle school science teacher, slugging along, and then before you had your midlife crisis. So that's an area of destiny story. So I went on longer than you wanted, but that's just a thought we'd love to leave you with, too.
Yeah, including the thought that graduating is good.
Very good.
Pat, Suzy, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.